If you're a student lying awake at night thinking, what if I choose the wrong job and mess up my whole future? This episode is for you. Because here's something nobody tells you at university. Your first job is not a life decision, it's not a verdict, and it is definitely not the thing that decides how successful you'll be. Today you're going to hear from two people whose careers did not follow straight lines, and yet everything they've done has built towards where they are now. By the end of this episode, you will know how to choose your first job strategically, how to spot whether a job is helping or harming your future, and how to stop putting so much pressure on one single decision. And one of the things you'll hear today might completely change how you look at your next move. So let's get into it. Welcome back to Inspiring Entrepreneurs. I'm Katie McNair from Strathclyde Inspire. A huge source of pressure for students and graduates is the belief that your first job has to be the right one, the perfect one, the one that sets the direction for the rest of your life. But careers don't work that way. They're built through experiments, pivots, skill building, and sometimes moves that only make sense years later. Today's episode is about how to make smart career moves without the pressure of getting it right straight away, and how to see your first role as a launchpad, not a life sentence. Joining me are two guests who see this every day from very different perspectives. Wes Beard, Managing Director and co-founder of Conversible, and Strathclyde graduate, whose career spans engineering, leadership, business, and entrepreneurship. Conversible are experts in creating and deploying AI-powered chatbot and WhatsApp solutions for businesses. And Camry Hole, careers consultant at the University of Strathclyde, who supports students navigating early career decisions and who also built her own non-linear career, first as a professional actress. So, Camry and Wes, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to start exactly where students are. So every week, Camry, you are meeting people who are figuring out their future. What would you say that students are most worried about when they are thinking about getting their first job?
I think it obviously varies with lots of individuals, but the core thing that probably brings it all together is not making the most of their degree or feeling like their degree isn't what helped get them there. I think that sort of I would say is the common thread, and there's different ways that people will measure that. So some that'll be earning a certain amount of money. For some, it will be using this very specific bit of knowledge they gained in their degree. For some, it might just be something that they deem as a graduate level job, or maybe that people around them think is a graduate level job. So I think it definitely varies, but feeling like this hard work of a degree hasn't paid off, I guess, is the key concern. I'd say the majority
Mm-hmm.
feel,
Yeah.
or maybe, not making the most of that degree.
Yeah. And so do you think that comes into even the things they're going to consider applying for?
Yeah, definitely. And I think because with minimum wage, rightly or wrongly, in inflating and going up, salary now is, the average graduate salary is not hugely higher than minimum wage. But that doesn't mean that a graduate salary in 5 years is not significantly higher than somebody without a degree before 5 years. So I think salary can be a really misleading kind of indicator, especially in some professions where they are just not well paid, but nonetheless, maybe fulfilling in other ways. A sort of open-mindedness sometimes is lacking of not even realising where that degree could take people. Something like 80% of graduate jobs don't require a specific degree subject, just a degree at any level because of the core skills everybody gains. And there are then certain measures like salary that are maybe not quite as strongly conclusive as some might think to that equals graduate level. So yeah, I think it definitely holds some people back, at least initially. And a lot of the time it's based on assumptions maybe they don't even believe themselves, but that they think society believes around them. And so sort of challenging that becomes a big part of my job and all of my colleagues' jobs.
Wes, what about for you when you were first graduating? Do these kind of worries and thoughts sound familiar to you, or was there something else going on in your mind at that point?
They sound 100% familiar to me. I mean, I was always the sort of person at school was very strong with numbers, so maths and physics were my choices. Didn't really know what I wanted to do at university at that point. Spoke to a careers advisor who told me engineering might be a good fit at the time. So that was the course I went for. Obviously, it was a master's degree, 5 years of studying. And as I got into my fourth year university, there was a slow realization that came over me that I thought, do I actually want to do this as a career? I did do some work experience with a company down in England for a summer in an engineering type of role, and that actually affirmed the fact that this isn't the career for me. So it was quite a shock to the system, as you can imagine. Like you say, you spend all that money, you have this idea in your head about what that job's going to look like. I had lots of obviously classmates who were very much that's the road they wanted to go down. For me, I just didn't feel that passion for an engineering type of role. So um, I ended up moving into the commercial side of the organization I ended up working for. Never looked back. It's one of these things, I guess, even if you're at the point of finishing a particular degree, it doesn't mean to say that you have to pursue a career in that. One of the things I love about the engineering faculty and Strathclyde in general, I think teaches us a lot to its students is those other skills that you get. So it's all about that kind of leadership and presentation and team building, all those projects that you get to get involved in. All of that stuff helped me sort of move into the type of career path that I wanted. Yeah, I've not looked back since.
Definitely feels like I can relate to that idea of your university experience being the subject knowledge, but then alongside all of that, and I think students are becoming more and more aware and savvy to this, that alongside your degree program, you're putting down some really important sort of skills that you're going to need. We talk about here being an entrepreneurial Strathclyder, and there being particular skills that are going to help you reach whatever it is you want to do, and that can change throughout life. We talk about the skills of resilience, forward thinking, value creation, communication, and collaboration. And that's something that we're trying to kind of instill in people through all sorts of different opportunities at the university, give you the chance to start putting those skills into action as you're going through your degree program at the same time, so that, yeah, no matter what it is you end up deciding you want to do, whether it is, oh yeah, this is the degree I did and now I'm going to go down the traditional career path for that, or you do your work experience and you discover, oh yeah, no, I don't think that's for me. Well, what are you going to do next? Having that resilience even is something that's going to help at that point. So, when you hear those kind of concerns about, I'm not really sure if that's the right thing for me because it doesn't fit with what I thought I was going to be doing, both as a career expert or just as someone who's further along in their own winding career path. What do you wish that students understood straight away? How would you put them at ease about that concern?
Shall I answer, Julie?
You go first.
So I think it's completely understandable if you're a student in that position and you're looking at jobs and you're thinking about your long-term career. I kind of see it as you're in two camps, right? You are 100% dedicated towards the career choice that you've made. Might be a doctor, might be a lawyer. That's been your passion. It's always been your passion. You hear about kids when they're 5, they say, I want to be an airline pilot. They become an airline pilot. Okay, that's absolutely fine, perfect. There is the other basket of people who basically don't really know. My son is in that category. I was in that category. I guess my message is don't worry. You have the best part of 40 years, if not more, of your career ahead of you. That is a long time. It's like double the amount of time that you've actually lived at that point. So anything can happen. You've got lots of choices. What I would say is that just work.
Yeah.
Find something, find any kind of job. I mean, when I was studying through uni, and I'm sure a lot of students watching this are in the same position, they were working through the summer, maybe working at weekends. They were just
Mm.
building up that work experience, and that teaches you things about the team building, leadership that we just discussed. So that would be my kind of big piece of advice is you might find your first job isn't exactly what you wanted. I don't think anyone lands their first job, or very few people land their first job thinking this is the perfect job for me. But what it does, it gives you that grounding of work, working in the corporate world or somewhere else, but gives you that value of work.
For sure. Would you add it?
Yeah, I would absolutely add on. I think just getting any exposure to working is always helpful, and that can be volunteering. It doesn't mean you have to be getting paid. And um, I see a lot of students that feel like that's not relevant to talk about as a graduate applying for sort of a first professional job. You go, well, no, you've at your very basic, you've turned up on time, you've learned to deal with things when you haven't wanted to be there, but you've seen it through. You've been resilient. You've had to probably actually apply problem solving rather than hypothetically think about it. And it's that thing of, as a student, you're the client.
Mm.
It's not you're doing everything for yourself.
Yeah.
As soon as you've had a job, even if it's a customer service job or you're, in hospitality or cleaning, you're doing something for your employer, for your client. And that mindset is a really healthy one to get experience and get to prove all the same skills that you're getting from your degree. Applying them in that as well is really, really helpful. And it makes you more trustworthy, I think, as a graduate for any job.
Yeah.
The big thing that I always think is, you could go into what you think is your dream job and the reality is different, because until you try things, it's really difficult to know for certain. All you can do is make not the right or the wrong decision. They don't exist. The best decision based on the facts that you have at the time. And that's why a lot of the work that we'll do in the career service, and, I know that what the academics do is you're just trying to help give the information. Try and find out as much about the jobs that you think you're interested in as possible. What's the actual reality? Get the work experience if you can, so that you realise that you don't like it.
Yes.
That is not a negative thing. That's a real positive thing.
Yes.
And think about, what don't I enjoy and where can I go that avoids that particular thing. Or the things that I did enjoy, how can I find more of that?
That makes me think about this idea of experience and how, yes, people think about work experience as going in there and doing those particular tasks that you can say to your next prospective employer, well, I've done this and I've done that and I've proved that I can do it. And yes, part of it is that, but then also the experience can be data. I have had this experience and I did not like it. So what did I not like about it? And I'm going to try and find a role that doesn't involve those bits, but I did enjoy this bit. So can I find a role that brings those bits more in, and then try out these other aspects that I've not tried yet? Gather more data. So thinking of your jobs as data and not destiny, I think, can really frame in a different way how you choose and how you perform and how resilient you are when things really don't go perfectly. Thinking of it as being, I'm gathering information here, rather than I'm needing to succeed in every single thing I ever do. So what really matters in a first role? If a student is choosing between roles, if someone's so fortunate as to have a few offers on the table, or they're considering what they want to do first, what do you think should matter more than the salary and the job title, or should be considered alongside those things?
I mean, again, it really depends on the individual. And for some people, and it's not my place to say there's a right or wrong. It's nobody's place but your own to say, well, this salary level equals okay and this doesn't. And some people have requirements. They need a certain salary to live the lifestyle that, they've decided they want to live. So, but I think the thing with salary is, with immediate starting salary is not what you'll be earning in 5 or 10 years. And so sometimes a bit of patience with the journey of looking at where it can take you, if that's something that is really important. I say also with job titles, unless you're working in a regulated profession where you cannot use that title, like pilot, doctor, and accountant, anyone can make up any job title for any job. So actually look at the job duties, responsibilities, who you're working with, what that company does. But to be honest, whenever I see anyone that's in that lucky position of having multiple offers, or even not, but just not sure to take something or not, or keep looking, is have a conversation like, well, take it all off the table. What does the dream job look like? What are the, what's the absolute perfect thing for you right now based on what you know about yourself? And then what order do they sort of come in? And because there's probably lots of things that are equally as important, but sort of grade it and then compare options against almost a marking matrix. Take emotion out of it a little bit and sort of go look at it totally separately and then apply through the lens of this job. And sometimes they go, oh, actually, maybe just makes you think about things in a different way. I mean, that's very much the way that my brain works. I need to be analytical about things. And that, I work with the faculty of engineering, so I see a lot of people like, I just need to kind of approach this like an engineering problem or a sort of, a mathematical problem, and it can just help unmuddy the waters, because sometimes it just feels overwhelming, and usually our students are making these decisions meanwhile doing final assignments and exams or various other things. There's family pressures, there's so much to unwind, so it's absolutely fair that it's overwhelming. But and come and speak to people. You don't have to figure that all out in your own head. I think there's this idea that everyone just sort of has a light bulb moment and they go, I just knew that was the right thing. No, you didn't. You thought about it. And I mean, that's why we as the career service, we offer support for our graduates for 5 years after they've left, because the first job doesn't have you with the next job or the next job.
Yeah.
So that kind of 5 years, hopefully we were able to see the students and our graduates through long enough that they've picked up the skills, or they found mentors in industry that can kind of take it over from.
Sure, yeah. And when you're going to a job interview, you get this kind of sticky question, I think, sometimes towards the end. Do you have any questions? And what do you think is a useful thing to ask at that point so that you can figure out whether the role is going to help you grow? I guess either of you, if you have a response on that.
I think speaking as an employer, one of the things that I always like to hear, and it's a very cliched question, but what does the career progression look like within that business? How much does the company support your training and development? I mean, I was very lucky when I first graduated that I did start within a graduate scheme, so it was a very structured program with leadership courses, and there was it was very kind of tailored along with the kind of day-to-day job. Now, unfortunately, with the way the job market is right now, I think those opportunities are becoming less and less. But that doesn't mean to say that there are companies who still want to nurture and develop and progress their employees. So for me, that was always a question that worked for me when I was looking for employment. Was what does the next 3 years look like for someone in my position? Don't be afraid to ask that. If anything, you'll get more respect from an employer by asking that question. It shows you're keen to progress. It shows you're sort of hungry. As an employer, I have to say I always like hearing that question, because it shows that people are thinking strategically. They're thinking ahead in their own career. So
Absolutely.
I would add to that I think any time I've worked in a team where that is very much a part of it is, commitment to further training. Usually whoever's interviewing you has probably undergone, like if they're committed to continuing to develop themselves, the likelihood is that feeds down, especially if you're speaking to somebody that's going to be your line manager. So
yeah,
even if you wanted to word it in a different way, it's sort of, what has the team recently done in terms of new development? What have you done in terms of new development? What sort of things?
it's
And
showing the
that's
active
leading.
interest, isn't it? It's like, you're not just applying to a faceless company, you're actually showing genuine interest in the business and where you see yourself in that business, which is all about culture, which I'm sure we'll get onto, but that, it's so important.
Having that forward thinking to think, well, I'm not just, here I am, I've got the job, I'm done.
Yeah.
Because that's definitely not it. The getting of the job feels like it's the first step, and then where are you taking it from there? So I'm going to ask you what your first job was and what it gave you, even if it wasn't what you imagined long term.
I mean, my first job ever was at 15 waitressing, and that was just to make a bit of money. But
Yeah.
I do come back to it quite a lot. I think I learned an awful lot about conflict resolution and being able to structure an argument just dealing with chefs, very stressed chefs. I definitely learned a lot of skills that I now use every single day. In terms of when I graduated from my first degree, I actually was really lucky and I got the equivalent of a graduate scheme, but I went to drama school and was an actress, so it's a bit of a different kind of pathway. But I was suddenly working on, I did get the dream job. And, in the Easter before I graduated, I went to the theatre, I looked at the stage and went, I'm going to be on that stage one day. And 6 months later, I was on that stage.
Wow.
And
Hmm.
in some ways it didn't live up to everything I sort of thought, oh, I'll just feel like a massive success. And of course, you still have your imposter syndrome, even though you got the dream job. And then I had the guilt that, oh gosh, everybody else, they're all struggling and here I am getting paid to do what we've all trained to do. And I really struggled with that, almost getting the right job. It wasn't without its flaws, but I think what that forced me to do was go, what is it that I thought this would be? What is it not? Where am I struggling? And a lot of it was just stuff I was like, you couldn't possibly have known this before you were in it.
Yeah.
And so it's about going, well, I have to just take it where I am right now.
You don't know what you don't know, right?
Yes.
Basically.
And so I saw it as that. I was like, every day I learn how little I knew the day before. And that can feel really overwhelming. But actually, when you think about it, it's exciting.
Yeah.
Or you can frame it as that, certainly. So I think I started to frame that. The uncertainty was always something that I really liked. And still do. I like control, uncertainty of things. And I suddenly was like, oh, you're in a career path where that doesn't exist more than most. And how are you going to tackle that?
Yeah, dealing with uncertainty is something I think we come back to on this podcast a lot.
Hmm.
And I don't think we're getting in more certain times. It just feels that's a really important thing to be able to cope with. because it's going to feature throughout your whole life. Even when you're, I mean, in my 40s now, I've had quite a few roles. Every day there can be something that comes along that I don't know exactly how I'm going to do that, but I do know that I've done quite a few things that I don't know how to do before, so I'm going to figure it out. Being an actress is quite a shift. From there,
Yeah, going from that to a 9 to 5 was very something. Yeah.
yeah. But I imagine as well that element of being able to hold someone's attention is maybe something that is quite
I
useful.
know very well if you are not. Be very aware, especially children. Yeah, yeah. No, I definitely learned a lot from that.
Yeah.
And so much of it's really funny when I did make the transition to a different career path, and I'd invested 10 years of towards the training, and it took years to get into the right drama school, and it's incredibly competitive. And as I say, I got the dream job, and then you feel the guilt to make the most of that. Like, I can't walk away because there are other people that would have bitten off my arm for this.
Yeah.
And walking away took a lot of going, nobody actually cares.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
about any of that. I'm worrying about this way more. But I think, my interview technique, 100%, I joke, I spent 30 grand getting interview technique in just that. And I think, there's also lots of, anytime you're teaching a class, I'm falling back on the same skill set. Anytime, I'm having to think about something from someone else's point of view. That's why I spent 3 years doing in my degree, was looking at things from different perspectives. So actually I was able to look and go, gosh, these have kind of given me incredible transferable life skills.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just applying them in a different way, but I'm still using my degree every single day of my working life. It's just no longer that my job title matches the title of my degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you started in a graduate scheme, which you said it had a fair amount of structure, and now you run your own path, if you like.
Yes.
So maybe you're the one more creating the structure.
Yeah.
What would you think you took from your first graduate role that has helped you reach where you are now?
Yeah, so I guess just to echo what Camry said as well, I think that pre-graduate work experience is also really vital. I mean, I was very first job was picking up golf balls in a driving range, and then I worked in the cinema for a while, and then I worked for WH Smith. All of that experience was dealing with customers in the real world, dealing with colleagues, right? So moving from that kind of environment then into the graduate role. So I ended up working for Peugeot, depending on how you like to pronounce it. And
Sure.
obviously very well-known car company. Joined their graduate program. It felt very much like The Apprentice, I must say, the experience. There were about 20 of us. As you can imagine, first day, everyone's fully suited and booted, the haircut, the full sort of corporate gig. And the program itself was all about this sort of, there were like 4 3-month jobs that we had to do, so in different departments in the company. So my first job was working in the warranty department. So you think usual fancy cars, well, fancy-ish for French cars, it's glamorous, car company. But actually, I spent my first 3 months in a warehouse in Coventry sorting out alternators from starter motors to, like basically trying to get their warranty returns operation in the right position. So that was a real learning lesson for me, first of all, because, sometimes it's not what you perceive a job might be. But second of all, the job I was given as a graduate, it was basically going into this sort of fairly small warehouse, trying to convince these 2 guys who had worked for the company for 40 years or so that it had to be changed, the processes had to be changed. Now, as you can imagine, fresh-faced young guy coming in, telling these experienced hires what to do was a massive uphill battle. So the only way I could actually get them to start clearing these things out was to basically roll my sleeves up and do it myself. So I would go down every morning in my suit in this warehouse, basically shoving trolleys of parts around this warehouse, completely different to what people might think that job entailed. But, it taught me all of these things that we've been talking about, resilience, being able to see the change in those guys. It was like something out of an American movie, where eventually after sort of a few months they see actually, this guy's he's actually doing what he said he was going to do, and trying to sort of change their behavior a little bit as well. And, these are all things to your point, Camry, that, I'm in this position now, obviously running the business, but there was no shame back then about doing that kind of work. It's sort of, I think it provides you the foundations of building up those characteristics and character traits that hopefully see you in good stead in the future. So, again, for anyone who's going into their first graduate job and thinking, this isn't quite what I thought it would be, it doesn't have to always be like that, but sometimes, a little bit of that initial, you've got to sort of appreciate the sour before you can appreciate the sweet kind of thing.
For sure. I think every early career it could include rejection, it could include boredom, it could include disillusionment, mistakes, doubt. What does resilience do in those scenarios, in building a career? And how can a student or someone who's maybe in that first role start to develop or improve their resilience to get through those tricky moments?
Resilience is a really interesting kind of concept
Yeah.
because I remember doing a bit of research on this when I first came into careers advice and guidance in this kind of profession. I thought, well, how can we build resilience without people having to suffer?
Yeah.
And the fact is, you kind of can't.
Mm.
You only build resilience through things going wrong
Yes.
and through making mistakes and having to go, oh, that was me, sorry,
Yeah.
and recovering from setbacks. And the thing is, if there's one guarantee, it's that you'll have setbacks. You might not have even had them at the end of university. Some people sometimes I'll see students that maybe have a bit of struggle in the middle of a degree. And I'm like, in some ways, well, that you're lucky. But everyone's going to face this at some point.
Yeah.
You're just learning all the skills to get through it a lot sooner. And for the most part, I think, no, to go back to researchers that have spent far longer looking at it than probably either of us have, um, it's a mindset, finding the mindset that helps you go, I can choose to bury my head in the sand here, or I can choose to try and find whatever positive I can and see this. Again, that sort of thing of you've said I've done things wrong, I've ended up in the wrong jobs, but I've just got more data points to hopefully make that better decision next time. And to go back to that point of the data points, anything that seems like a setback, it means that the next decision you make is going to be more informed. And so it's probably going to be closer to something that feels more aligned with what you want. So I think shifting the mindset, I would say, is a helpful way to start building that resilience, or at least recognizing the resilience you're already probably building.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I definitely 100% agree with that. That resilience comes from within. It comes from your experiences. It comes from your life experiences as well as your career experiences. Sometimes you go through life. Life's not easy, right? You have to take a few punches, and it's about how you get back up again. Of course, that said, it's also really important to have a support network around you. I think like don't isolate yourself so much that you just feel like you're constantly putting pressure on yourself. Like there are, again, if you're looking for a new job, a new graduate job, then you might be with other graduates. You can use that support network, but even your friends and family network can be really helpful. And certainly when I started Conversible, that was very much I was with myself and my co-founder. That was it. We didn't really have anyone around us to help, and that's why Strathclyde Inspire really helped us, because we had that support network. They could, if we got a particularly bad, maybe we lost a sale, or we lost a customer, we have those support networks around us to sort of say, okay, it's fine. It's not the end of the world. These are some of the things you should do. So, it definitely comes from within, but also make sure that you don't just rely on yourself to sort of get through those difficult times.
Absolutely. Having that support, maybe a bit of mentorship, seeing people further down the road who can tell you they've been there. Even if they can't give you the solution to your problem, just I think knowing that you're not alone, I think can be really very valuable. Just sort of veering into that, talking about the kind of change in direction into then being a founder and starting your own thing. What gave you the confidence to think, well, yeah, I think now's the time. I can do this. How can people find confidence within themselves, whether it's to start their own thing or change the path they're on, take a step back, restructure, and then move forward? How can people find the confidence to do that? What gave you the confidence to do it?
you could call it a midlife crisis potentially. No, I think I was working in a career that was mainly spanning automotive across sales, predominantly, and I got to a point in my career where I sort of was looking ahead. Like we'd sort of already just talked about where are you going to be in 5 years' time, and I couldn't really see myself doing the same thing forever. Now, again, that's not to decry anyone that wants to do that. I have colleagues of mine who are still working in the same roles that they have, and they might well be until retirement, and they're perfectly happy. And I have, more power to them for that. I just wasn't one of those people. I couldn't see myself sitting in another job for 20 years doing the same thing to retirement. You can get quite philosophical about this kind of stuff, I think. You can sort of say, like when I'm on my deathbed and I'm sort of 80, 85 years old, hopefully a bit older, I'm looking back on my life going, okay, did I really make the most of the opportunities, and did I really make the most of like my life and my career? And sort of within that context, I was also, working for big companies. You're very much a cog in a machine. You're having an impact in your own sort of small world, but are you making? I felt like I wasn't really making real impact, and it was very political as well. You find that in the corporate world. So the loudest voices tend to, get the furthest sort of thing. And I was quite an introverted type of person. So I just felt I couldn't see a way or see a future where I was going to all of a sudden become the managing director of Peugeot or Honda or anyone else. So I thought, okay, well, how can I do myself justice? I think I am capable. Like I have had that confidence inside me to say, well, if I don't try, I'm not going to know. I might actually do this and completely fail. And if I do, I'll go back to finding another corporate position. So again, it's just finding that inner strength and inner confidence. And basically said one day, I'm going to start this company. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a story before that. I tried a couple of things, failed miserably. I did an MBA at Strathclyde, which, was really challenging having a young child at the time. So, again, all of these things had sort of built up to this moment. But I'd eventually, saw the makings of a business that I thought there was some interest in. At the time, this was 2017. There was some talk about chatbots coming over from the US. Spoke to a few people in the UK. What's a chatbot? Like nobody had really heard of it. And I thought, okay, there could be something here. And then we just took it one step at a time. Over the sort of the next 12 months, I kind of ran it as a little side gig, along my corporate job, which I probably shouldn't have done. But I did it anyway. And then, yeah, a year later, we launched the business. So, yeah.
That is interesting that you had the confidence to do it, and it was with something that people didn't really know about. So you're also dealing with, but then you also just kept one foot in the corporate world while you got going. So it's not just abandoning everything necessarily and being, here's my confidence move, burn everything down. Now I'm 100% in this.
Yeah.
You actually had quite a lot of confidence, but you also had a path that you navigated to move from one to the next. So that forward thinking of how am I going to move from here over here
Yeah.
was something you had to put in play to make sure the confidence wasn't misplaced.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a very pragmatic approach, and I don't know if that fits the startup narrative or not, but it was pragmatic, but also still very high risk. I had some savings that I'd saved up while I was working for the in the corporate world. I basically threw all of that into the company. I took out a loan, a personal loan, put that into the company. So financially, I had, let's say, lots of reasons that I couldn't let this fail. That was itself a motivation. But there were a couple of like red lines that I sort of said, I will not continue this if, assuming the business was to go okay, but I wouldn't continue if I had to put my house on the line or if I had to sacrifice my family. So it would be that those were the two red lines. If those red lines were crossed, I would give it up and go back to the day job. And thankfully, I never got into that position. again, I was very realistic about the fact 90% of startups fail within the first year, another 90% fail within the next 3 years. So it's a very tough environment to operate in. But I, again, sort of balanced out that pragmatism with the risk. And then, if you don't have risk takers, then you don't get new businesses. So
I can imagine, though, as you're going through that process, you'll be learning so much, you'll be getting stressed in so many different ways. In your opinion, how can someone tell the difference between a role that's stretching them and, I guess, maybe moving them towards something in the future, and one that's just draining them? You talked about a colleague there, or colleagues that are perfectly happy. I'm in this job. I'm going to do this job. That's all I require. And they don't necessarily want to be stretched. And then there's you who's kind of going, no, I think there's more. I can offer more. I can do more. There can be a larger result.
yeah.
So how can you tell a role that is stretching you and one that's just draining you?
So for me, I call it the Monday morning test. So it's that feeling of, and everyone's had it. You get up on a Monday, and are you actively looking forward to going to work? Now, I think it's sort of, of course, we all have Mondays. We all have Mondays where like, oh, even the best jobs in the world. I'm sure Brad Pitt turning up on set some Monday mornings is thinking, oh, I really can't be bothered with this. But generally speaking, if you feel like that, you feel excited about going to work in the morning. I think the other thing I would say, and this was one of the things I still remember an old boss of mine saying, it's also about how you put your energy into a job. So I was doing a job, and I won't name the company, but it was a pretty mundane job on the surface of it. It was it was an analytics role and lots of like data processing and that kind of stuff. And it got a little bit tiresome. And then I had my appraisal with my manager at the time, and he taught me some hard truths. He just said, you have the job, but you're on the graduate program. You need to think about, what more can you do to really add value to this? And it really got me thinking, actually, I'm not just here to do a job. Like, I'm here to actually try and transform this department or do something that's quite innovative that maybe gets people's attention or creates efficiencies and that kind of stuff. So I almost had to kind of give myself a kick and think, right, put my kind of graduate hat on really and think like, what are the other things actually that I can do within this job that will really stretch me? And when I had that, it was a light bulb moment because it completely reframed how I saw that job. And then over time, I really enjoyed it. I was like building out new reporting suites that no one had seen before and using little tricks with Excel that, some of the older guys in the department were sort of, this is mind blowing. So things like that, I think, it's not just about accepting the job at face value, but making the job your own, being excited about getting up in the morning.
Yeah. Any opinions on how someone can tell that a job is still serving their development, even if it's not their dream role?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of could come back to that. You make the best decision for you every day based on the data points you've got, the facts you've got, what you've realised about yourself, but also about the job you're in. And, you know, if you're not enjoying your job for whatever reason, it feels really dry. You can either choose to try and change within that job, or you say, yeah, okay, I'm going to walk away from it. But I think you first of all have to go, why am I not enjoying this? And try and understand that, because it could be that it's something that's going to follow you into the next job, in which case, that's not, the job isn't going to change that fundamental, or if you move into something similar. But I mean, every time you move job, it's a risk, because if you go from what you know into something else. But I think where I've made choices to move, if I kind of look at what has carried me between them, it tended to be when either the job didn't meet, what I wanted to do, it wasn't the right job, and I consciously was using it as a stepping stone to get a certain skill set to carry me somewhere else, which I definitely did when I first graduated from my postgrad. I sort of knew I did it in this pandemic, so where I was supposed to get lots of placements giving one-to-one guidance to school pupils and adults, I got none of it because we couldn't. So I was like, well, that's what I need to get. I need to just get one-to-one all the time, because otherwise nobody's going to hire me to work in this environment. So I looked at where are there lots of jobs, tougher, and I worked for an employability charity, which was not where I wanted to be forever, because it was, it was quite KPI driven, and I thought, these are people's lives.
Rare.
And I've been sort of, them in a job or not in a job is seen as a success marker rather than them being in the right job for them. And I was working with single parents, and so they already had full-time jobs as far as I was concerned. Um, and so this was, about finding work that fitted with their life. But it gave me that one-to-one. I was on the phone with people from 9 till 5 every single day, which I then could leverage into my next role. And then moved because I was on a temporary contract and it wasn't permanent. But actually, it wasn't the job. It wasn't the environment I was in. It was the logistics. I was doing a really long commute. By this point, I had a partner. We had a life
Yeah.
in a certain part of and I knew that was a limitation on me, but it was one that, I chose to prioritize that over moving through that dream job. So I sort of looked, and I think it's going, is this currently fitting with the life I want? And am I gaining something from it that's helping me get the life I want?
Yeah.
And I say life broadly because your career is part of your life. Yes. And everyone has different levels where they can separate or not. And I think, so that's what I'd say has driven me through them, and I would recommend to other people to think about.
Yeah. Thinking, always it feels like we're returning to this idea of thinking a few steps ahead of you're here now. What is it that you're getting out of this? What do you want to get next? How are you going to make that move? What big changes can you see coming over the horizon now? Because there's your life we've talked about. There's that affects what you do, but there's the world we're living in. There's the way industry is changing. There's the way work-life balance is changing. There's sustainability issues. There's all kind of things that are constantly changing. What big changes can you see coming over the horizon that you're thinking about, you're obsessing about right now as you're planning your own next moves?
It's a massive cliche, and it's probably been on every podcast, but AI. It's just, we're very heavily involved in this space, as you can imagine, with what we do. It will change the world of work significantly. I don't want to sound too doom and gloom around that, but I think it will do a lot in terms of disruption to the white collar workforce as the industrial revolution did for the blue collar workforce. I do think that will happen. We're already starting to see a little bit of evidence of that from some of the larger companies, who are shedding jobs for sort of basic tasks that could be achieved by an AI. That's probably the big one. Obviously, the geopolitical situation right now is pretty tumultuous. Probably is a massive understatement with everything going on. So I wouldn't like to be a politician currently. But we've been through these times in history before. Like, significant change has just been part of humanity, really, from even before the Industrial Revolution. So humans are great at adapting to changing circumstances. I do think that, if we can embrace AI in the right way, it will do a lot of things for us. It will create, I think, a lot of new jobs that maybe haven't existed before. I think the key is trying to not place a bet, that's maybe the wrong way of putting it, but trying to predict as best as you can what does that new world look like, given the rapid changing nature of AI and what's happening in the world. So I'm not saying I have the answer to that question, but I think as long as you can sort of start thinking, okay, right, this is the career I want. AI is coming. Like the internet is here. It's just going to be part of the fabric of life. The world is changing. Climate change is obviously happening. What does my role look like in that? What does this career look like in that world? One of the big regrets I have, actually, speaking about entrepreneurship, was in my engineering degree, one of my friends or one of my classmates at the time, had this great idea back in the sort of early 2000s about drones. He said drones will be huge in the future for like delivering organ. He had this idea, delivering organs to hospitals who needed them desperately and that kind of stuff. Drone technology was fairly non-existent back then. Certainly from a commercial point of view, it's very much sort of exclusively military. And at the time we laughed at it, and this is a bonkers idea. And here we are, 20 years later, and we're talking about, Amazon are building delivery drone networks, and in the military they're being used extensively, and and these medical applications, they are looking at this stuff. And so that's I think a great example of what I'm talking about is, okay, if you want to be an engineer think about those technologies in 10 to 20 years' time. Think about those spaces, and if you can get yourself into those spaces now, then you will become a leader in one of those spaces when that takes off, whether that might be quantum or whatever that might be.
Yeah. To add to that, the core thing to keep that up is just don't stop being curious.
Yeah,
Don't
absolutely.
worry your, and I can very much understand why you'll see so many people that go, I don't do politics. You go, it is you'll get it in the company you work in, you'll get it in any team you work in, it's all there. And then up to that sort of geopolitical level is, the decisions that people way outside of our control are making will affect the work that we do because,
Yeah, 100%.
and the legislation and where the money comes from and the funding for different, if suddenly a world leader, I don't know, decides that climate change isn't a real thing, does the push towards sustainability go, and then where there was loads of growth, there's a bit of pullback. So, but if you remain curious, why is that happening? What's happening? Why is it happening? What's going to come in its place? And just being interested. And I think that's, if you're in the right job, it probably means that doesn't feel like a chore to be curious about it. If you stop feeling that, and it's something that's important to you, maybe that, to go back to the, when is it time to move on? I think that. But yeah, curiosity and genuine interest in keeping that is probably the core,
Yeah.
I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been so instructive to hear you talk about your experience in this area. We like to go towards a little rapid fire section where you can not have to go quite so deep into your answers. So anyone who feels ready, just give me a quick answer to the following. One myth about first jobs that students should let go of.
You're defined by your career on that first job.
Brilliant.
Not till.
Okay. One skill students should optimize for their first role.
I think being anticipatory, seeing things before they become a problem, being interested to sort of go, why are we doing things this way? What can we do? So I think being that sort of anticipatory, or I guess it's forward thinking, but yeah, that's
Okay, that's great. Yeah. A mistake that is easier to recover from than people think.
For every mistake, yeah. As long as you don't burn down the company, that I think
right up the sun.
most things I think are acceptable for companies.
If you own it,
If you
when you learn from it.
if you're honest and you own it,
Yeah.
and you learn from it, 100%.
Perfect. Okay. And lastly, advice that you would give your graduate self. I think it'd be nice to hear from both of you on this one. If you look back to you when you were just entering the world of work and you didn't know what you know now, what's the one thing you would give to yourself then?
Ask lots of questions, I think, is the big thing for me. One of the things can I deep dive a little bit more
Please,
in that?
yeah,
That's okay.
that's
One of the things I found, we recruited for a role about 6 months ago. We received probably 150 applications for that role. Only one job, obviously, so highly competitive. But the ones that stood out were the ones who were bold. So, they would maybe send a separate covering letter or a thank you email, or it's actually, you'd be gobsmacked. I bet a lot of people listening to this probably think everyone does that. You'd be gobsmacked. Probably 3 out of those 150 actively sent an email after, thank you for the interview, really love to work for this company. That stuff really, really matters. And then when you're starting, asking lots of questions, like, don't be afraid to ask.
Okay, brilliant. So already just that little thing of knowing, oh, right, I might be like 3 out of 100 and who, if I just make that one little change, could stand out in a way
Massively,
that
yeah.
is going to help.
How many of the applications do you think were written by AI? Just out of interest.
Very good question.
Instantly got put in the
Probably more than I'd care to imagine. Yeah. And this is a little bit of the worry about AI to a degree, is that you've got those applications coming by AI, but you also got screening being done by AI by a lot of these big companies as well. So again, the lesson for, like, I would sort of always suggest is what you're going to do different, what you're going to do different in your application. And I think, going back to my point there about sending that email, maybe even making that phone call, just showing that your interest, AI is not going to do that. 95% of other applicants won't do that. Like, I'm telling you right now, because I've experienced it. So, like, if that gives you that edge, then it will put you in good stead.
Be human. Be a real person. And
You're a real person.
the real person
Exactly.
in front of the person. I
100%,
say that about
be a real
pick up the
person.
phone. So
Yeah.
you'd be amazed. People just don't phone each other,
Yeah.
and it instantly makes you real.
100%.
and more difficult to say no to,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think to go back, my advice to myself would be nobody else is watching as closely as you think they are. I spent so much time worrying what my parents thought, what my first employer thought, what I thought society thought of me. And I look back now and I go, God, nobody cared. Everyone was so wrapped up in their own world that I silenced a lot of what I wanted and what mattered to me.
Mm.
And I don't regret what I did because I learned that I wouldn't be where I am now without every single one of those steps. But
Yeah.
that's something that I've been a lot happier in my work and in my life when I've lifted it a little bit. Very easy to say, very difficult to do, but nonetheless, I think worth challenging
Yeah.
yourself to do.
Imposter syndrome is a very real thing, isn't it? But like you say, it's like recognizing that as well, isn't it?
It's knowledge, it's there, and when you're the first step of doing something about it.
Yeah.
I think we tend to limit ourselves more than other people do. Yes. And I see that every day when I see students, and they're telling me assumptions. I go, who told you that? Why do you believe that? And a lot of the time it's self-fulfilled prophecy. Yeah. So I think, challenge that. Somebody gets the job, why not you?
Yeah.
But genuinely, why not?
Yeah.
That's great. I think what I'm going to take away from this then is this idea: be human, make mistakes, ask the questions, and really don't worry, because there's almost no mistake that is going to lock you out permanently. And people do not care nearly as much as you think they do about your own journey. That's the thing you can focus on. Don't worry about what everyone else might think about that or might not, because it's
And ask for help with it.
yeah.
Whether it's family, friends, your career service, your academics, your university, whoever you trust. You are not in any of it on your own.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we will put some information for anyone who's at Strathclyde and is listening to this about different paths to support that they can get through the career service and through Inspire. So take a look for that in the show notes. And thank you very much for joining us and sharing your knowledge. It's been great having this conversation.
Thank you.
For having us.
Thank you.
Here's what I hope you take from today. Your first job is not a verdict on your future. It's a data point. Careers are not built through perfect decisions made under pressure. Instead, they are built through learning, resilience, forward thinking, and the courage to keep adjusting. What matters most early on is not getting it right, it's building skills, self-trust, and putting yourself in environments where you can grow. Wes and Camry have shown us that some of the most valuable career skills are born from paths that don't look linear on paper. So if you're feeling unsure, you're not failing, you're doing the work of building a future. And if this episode eased some pressure, share it with someone who needs to hear it, or leave us a review wherever you listen, because it really does help other viewers to find us. Stay tuned for the rest of the series, where we're going to be discussing how to develop your entrepreneurial mindset so that you can reach your personal and professional goals, with episodes on AI and the future of work, how to maximize the impact of your LinkedIn profile, and how to find work that aligns with your values and still pays the bills.